you for joining us. I'm John Razimus. In this episode, we will be discussing the Hutchison Effect. If you're into science in any way, shape, or form, chances are you've heard of the Hutchison Effect. Personally, I was introduced to the Hutchison Effect back in the early 90s. I saw it on various science shows, paranormal shows. It was definitely intriguing, and I wanted to know more about it. I'll give a brief description of the effects, but I won't be able to use Wikipedia to summarize these effects, as someone removed the legitimate Hutchison Effect Wikipedia entry. This entry used to be there a few years ago. I remember seeing it. For those who regularly edit Wikipedia, I encourage you to please help John K. Hutchison out. We don't want future generations to have never heard of it. It was a legitimate story. Now, with John K. Hutchison, he's been interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens, probably 100 times plus, for different TV shows. I know he told me he has Japanese fans, German fans. He's worldwide. Whether you accept what he has done or not, I believe he deserves a Wikipedia entry. And so that's just my advice for any of those putting this entry up. Please link it to many different various news sites. The more legitimate the site, the better. I found an entry on John K. Hutchison and the Hutchison Effect from gizmag.com. And I've never heard of gizmag.com, but compared to some of the other random entries and blogs, it's a legitimate article. And I'm going to use that when I try to get his Hutchison Effect entry back up there, and I encourage anyone to help out. So back to the summary of what the Hutchison Effect is. I'm sure someone else could describe it better than me, but here's my summary. Basically, John K. Hutchison is an inventor and a scientist, and he acquired a good amount of military surplus equipment, such as radio frequency equipment, started his best of what he knew how to do a scientific experiment. He would turn it on and focus all the radio waves and the voltage toward one area, which resulted in an array of exotic effects, such as metals bending and melting and having a jellification type effect, objects moving and levitating, objects melting into other objects, bars would crack, melt, seem to bend in different shapes, and so it went from anti-gravity, levitation, to vast changes in the atomic structure of metal objects and other objects. And he deemed it, John K. Hutchison called it the Hutchison Effect, and it's widely known among many scientists. The academic scientific journals don't consider it legitimate because I think it has something to do with the fact that the scientific method wasn't used precisely word for word. He knew how many volts, he knew how many watts, he knew what machines he turned on, but I guess there weren't any scientists to observe it. And I believe maybe some have, but like I said, I have not thoroughly researched this subject. And so because of the lack of the scientific method, and perhaps third-party observers from some skeptic society weren't there, that they deem it to be fake. Now, I did read some of those skeptic opinions, such as he used a magnet to levitate objects. First of all, a magnet's not going to melt metal. So it seems like they have tried to focus on the anti-gravity, and they've totally ignored the melting of the metal. Now, I have to research it more thoroughly, but I found the subject very interesting, and I'm already going to tell you up front, I'm not going to deem it a hoax or not in this episode, because I don't know if it's a hoax or not. I just find it a very interesting paranormal subject of someone supposedly successfully conducting anti-gravity, levitation, and the vast changing of atomic structures of metal. There's a different tangent in that subject alone, which I'm not going to mention in this episode. I was able to ask Mr. Hutchison a few questions via email. The following are his replies on December 8th, 2014. When was the first time you successfully conducted a Hutchison Effect experiment? 1979. I heard while you were conducting the experiment, sometimes the effects such as levitation would take place at a neighbor's house. Can you elaborate a little on this? What did your neighbors say? Neighbors got upset. News medias covered the stories. Complaints to Mayor Wayne Wright. I've heard your devices have been called the poltergeist machine. Do you think there is a connection between your past experiments and poltergeist activity some have experienced during hauntings? Poltergeist machine was just a film producer name for a show. I've heard your devices have possibly opened up doorways to other dimensions, allowing the massive amounts of energy to manipulate the objects in the experiments. What is your opinion on what happened? Do you think intelligent beings were involved or simply non-intelligent energy? No beings, just odd effects. Mankind has not mastered levitation or anti-gravity. At least, this is the public view. Do you believe your experiments were the closest we have ever come to achieving this? No. Anti-gravity was made at Los Alamos in the 1980s. I watched a video of you explaining the toy UFO on the string. I believe you in this case. I just wanted to point out to the non-believers that the string was never meant to be hidden. Can you tell a little bit more about this? I like to mention it because it seems to be the number one thing that people point at when trying to debunk your story. Beyond Invention Discovery Channel show, GriffinProductions.com, a string was used to hold the saucer in place so it would not fly out of camera range. Your custom-built power cell battery. How long does it last and what have you used to charge it? I do believe the battery industry purposely creates short-lasting batteries, forcing us to buy them over and over, and any advancements in this field I greatly appreciate. Crystal power cells are in Japan on display in Germany. No interest in them from companies, but as receivers, big interest. Google search field stress detector. I have read you are no longer conducting Hutchison Effect experiments, have not done so for a long time, and choose not to do so. Why is this? Some speculate it's because you have not been able to reproduce the effects. Is this true? I have no interest in Hutchison Effect. When was the last time you successfully conducted a Hutchison Effect experiment? Last time was 2009 for a German research group who bought the lab from me for only $50,000 USD. I uploaded all their videos. Are you working on anything new? Instead, I am doing anti-radiation reduction plus other more fun things. Thank you. www.life-ray.org. Cheers, John K. Hutchison. I was looking for a good explanation as to why Hutchison hasn't done any new Hutchison Effect experiments, but I believe it's quite clear. The reason is because he sold most of his lab equipment. And without his original lab equipment, he has a slim chance of recreating the effects. See, I asked the questions and then he gave me the answers, so I wasn't able to ask follow-up questions in this particular question and answer session. But if you have any follow-up questions you would like me to ask him, feel free to post that in the comments. But I will put a link to his official YouTube channel, and I will put a link to a couple links that he wanted me to share. I admit I haven't done a thorough investigation on Mr. Hutchison's videos yet. I will do so in the future, so there's guaranteed going to be a part 2 of the Hutchison Effect episodes. I know the skeptics have claimed his effect wasn't real on day 1, but I haven't heard too much evidence as to why. But this is just what I've been able to find so far. They claim he used a magnet, but his effect was more than levitation. It involved objects melting, metal turning into jelly, with the consistency without wood burning around it. And the skeptics seem to ignore that evidence. He still has pieces of this melted metal to this day. I haven't seen any skeptics even run any type of tests on his metal found in the metal itself that he still has samples of. I know he has sold a lot of his stuff on eBay, and I know he sold his lab for $50,000 to a German research group, but I've watched enough of his videos to see that he doesn't have a daytime normal job, and so I sell my old stuff laying around when I need to pay the bills, it's understandable that he would have to do the same thing. So we can't use that as any reason to doubt his previous work. I leave it up to you to judge for yourself. Again, this is not a close examination of the facts. It's simply a first episode on the Hutchison Effect. I'm just interested in the subject. I've always found it interesting. Just wanted to follow up on it, and hopefully I'll be able to ask John K. Hutchison more questions, but it's definitely up to him. He's definitely a man of few words, and it's understandable. He might think I'm a huge skeptic, but I'm not, actually. I'm open to anything within reasonable doubt, within a reasonably open mind. I consider the effect very possible. I think anti-gravity probably can be reproduced by mankind. I just think we haven't done it consistently. It's possible John K. Hutchison did create this effect, though. I don't doubt that it's possible. Until next time, this has been John Razimus with Hoax Hunter. Be seeing you.